Close your eyes and imagine New York high society in the mid-20th century, an exclusive world of glittering cocktail parties, lavish mansions, and famously impeccable manners. In this shimmering realm, few figures shone as brightly as Babe Paley. Born Barbara Cushing in 1915, she became better known by her beloved nickname, Babe, a moniker that spoke to her favored status in a family of high achievers. From a young age, Babe appeared destined for glamorous heights. She possessed extraordinary grace, a gift for cultivating social connection, and a mesmerizing beauty that caused admirers to gush over her mere presence. Yet behind that polished exterior and the curated magazine covers lay a woman plagued by private heartbreaks. From a near-fatal car crash that paradoxically enhanced her famous smile, to a marriage that seemed perfect only on the outside, Babe's glittering story always had a darker undertow. And though she became a style icon, capable of starting trends simply by repurposing a scarf, she spent much of her adult life juggling migraines, marital frustrations, and the creeping anxiety that her husband's wandering eye would eventually shatter her carefully built image. Her final acts, marked by confessions to old friends and whispered regrets on her deathbed, reveal the pain she had carried for decades. In a social era when outward appearance was everything, Babe's life speaks to how precarious that facade could be. This is the story of a remarkable woman whose beauty was legendary, but whose anguish ran far deeper than even her closest friends realized. From her early days as the youngest Cushing sister to her final heartbreaks and tragic death from lung cancer, Babe Paley's life offers a poignant glimpse into the contradictions of high society: charm and cruelty, opulence and emptiness, approval-seeking and deep loneliness. Join us on this journey as we peel back the glittering veneer, exploring Babe's privileged childhood, her complex family dynamics, her tumultuous marriages, and the web of social rivalries that kept her on an ever-spinning wheel of perfection. This script will shine a light on both her triumphs, the camaraderie of her swans, her storied fashion influence, her near-flawless hosting skills, and her tragedies, the children who felt ignored, the unrelenting migraines that tormented her, and the humiliations she suffered at the hands of an unfaithful husband. We'll delve into how Babe's closest confidant, Truman Capote, once elevated her status as a perfect socialite only to later betray her in print. Finally, we'll trace Babe's heartbreaking last stand. She used her dying breaths to speak truths that had remained hidden behind her famously red lips. Welcome to the world of Babe Paley, a story of beauty, betrayal, and the high cost of life at the very top. The fabulous Cushing family. Babe Paley was born Barbara Cushing on July 5, 1915. As the youngest of 5 children, she found herself in a family both steeped in prestige and meticulously groomed for success. Her father, Harvey Cushing, had reached the pinnacle of medical fame as a celebrated brain surgeon. In an era when prestige often sprung from old money or political connections, Dr. Cushing's achievements gave the family an unusual blend of intellectual standing and upper-class acceptance. Babe's mother, Catherine, was a socialite who moved comfortably in elite circles, setting the tone for the fashionable life Babe would come to embody. Being the baby of the family earned her the affectionate nickname Babe, a title that stuck even as she matured into a tall, graceful woman. Her 2 older sisters, Minnie and Betsy, had already secured enviable matrimonial connections. One married into the illustrious Astor family, another married into the Roosevelt clan. Society watchers soon took note of the striking Cushing daughters, collectively referring to them as the fabulous Cushing sisters. This moniker was not bestowed lightly. With Minnie, Betsy, and Babe appearing on countless society pages, the public became enthralled with their beauty, charm, and societal ascension. Still, Babe consistently stood out. Even among her photogenic siblings, she seemed to radiate a special quality, an easy, regal baron that made people gravitate toward her. A guest at one of her early parties once remarked, "So great is her beauty that no matter how often I see her, each time is the first time." That sentiment would follow her throughout her life, an enduring testament to the magnetic quality that drew people to Babe, for better or for worse, a nightmare accident that redefined her smile. In 1934, as a freshly debuted socialite ready to conquer the world of New York's elite gatherings, Babe found her path dramatically interrupted. At just 19 years old, she was involved in a harrowing car accident while returning from a Long Island society party with her boyfriend. The crash, severe enough to knock out her front teeth, inflicted extensive damage to her jaw as well. Suddenly, the luminous young woman faced a painful series of reconstructive and dental procedures that threatened to derail her budding social success. For weeks, Babe hid her bruised and swollen lower face from visitors by draping it with a chiffon scarf, revealing only her eyes. Even in suffering, her instinct was to remain as poised and elegant as possible, maintaining her standards of decorum in front of friends and extended family. But perhaps the most astonishing outcome of that medical ordeal was how it affected her physical appearance. Once the bruises faded and her dental surgeons finished their work, Babe's replacement teeth gave her an even more dazzling smile than before. The accident, which might have spelled social disaster in an age when image was paramount, instead endowed her with a look that admirers found simply irresistible. This harrowing experience foreshadowed the complexity of Babe Paley's life. From adversity and pain came a renewed aura of beauty, further establishing her as the rising star of high society. While the accident may have shaken her confidence temporarily, it ultimately became just another element of the legend forming around Babe, an early brush with tragedy that she turned almost magically to her advantage. Stepping into the fashion world. By 1935, Babe had successfully navigated her debutante season and relocated to New York City, a move that brought her closer to her married sisters and deeper into a realm of high fashion and media influence. Over the next several years, she worked her way through various fashionable roles, eventually securing a position at the iconic magazine Vogue in 1939. It was there, among the bustling editorial offices and glamorous photo shoots, that Babe's exquisite style sense found its ideal environment. Her co-workers and superiors at Vogue adored her for her innate flair, polished manner, and surprising savvy about what readers craved. Babe's background as both a scion of the upper class and a forward-looking fashion enthusiast made her an instant favorite in the industry. She combined what was sometimes seen as a lofty, old-world elegance with a willingness to embrace modern fashion changes. If Babe wore it, people paid attention, but Babe's focus was soon diverted by another presence within her orbit, a dashing man named Stanley Grafton Mortimer, Jr. Born into a privileged old money family, Stanley Mortimer had the sort of pedigree that perfectly matched Babe's social circle. They shared not only a lineage of wealth and influence, but also a mutual attractiveness that set them apart as a power couple in the making. With her career on the rise, a promising marriage on the horizon, and the endless possibilities of New York's elite scene at her fingertips, Babe seemed poised to write a fairy tale ending. Yet real life rarely imitates a fairy tale for long. Marriage to Stanley and motherhood, struggles. In September 1940, Babe Cushing became Babe Mortimer after marrying Stanley in an elegant yet understated ceremony in East Hampton. Their union looked straight out of a high society magazine spread, the handsome groom, the beautiful bride, and the well-heeled guests, all in a picturesque setting. In the early years, they welcomed 2 children, Tony and Amanda, further cementing the perception of a perfect little family. Yet trouble lurked behind closed doors, and Babe's devotion to social climbing often outstripped her nurturing instincts. When World War II intervened, Stanley enlisted in the Navy. He returned home changed, sullen, grappling with the psychological impacts of conflict and increasingly reliant on alcohol to cope. Babe, perhaps more attuned to her social life than family obligations, found her marriage unraveling. Even her daughter Amanda would later reflect on how strained and distant Babe was as a mother, observing a near-complete lack of genuine involvement in her children's lives. By 1946, after just 6 years, the Mortimer marriage ended in divorce, a scandal that quickly spread through the Cafe Society rumor mill. While Babe was hardly the first socialite to divorce, her star power and rising prominence in fashion pages made her story all the more scandalous. She walked away with a settlement intended to cover her children's needs, but it was her next choice in husband that would truly shake and also solidify her place within the echelons of New York society. William Paley, the CBS tycoon. Even before the ink dried on her divorce papers, Babe was seen in the company of CBS founder and broadcasting magnate William "Bill" Paley. Over a decade older than Babe, Bill was a self-made man whose media empire had grown from a modest family cigar business into one of the nation's most influential networks. His background was notably different from the blue-blooded Mortimer clan. He was of Jewish descent, a detail that, unfortunately, led some in high society to view him with skepticism or even outright snobbery. Bill, for his part, had recently separated from his wife, Dorothy Hart Hearst, whom he dismissed as too strong-willed for his taste. He had a reputation for being driven, cold, and fiercely ambitious, qualities that often intimidated those around him. But he also had wealth that outshone most others in his social sphere, making him a valuable catch for a woman seeking financial security, power, or both. Married in July 1947, the new couple wasted no time securing their position. With Babe's social connections and Bill's media might, they became a force, though not exactly beloved by everyone. While Bill's public persona exuded confidence and charm, he was privately known to have a fearsome temper. Babe, accustomed to managing perceptions, soon found herself trying to appease a man whose approval was perpetually elusive. Yet, they remained in demand. Everyone wanted the Paleys at their events, but the Paleys themselves often chose to remain aloof. Invitations, if extended at all, were handled through formal letters. As the new center of Cafe Society attention, Bill and Babe exercised the most precious form of power in those circles: exclusivity. Truman Capote and the Swans. One of the most intriguing figures Babe Paley formed a bond with during her marriage to Bill was the writer Truman Capote. Their first meeting was famously marred by confusion. Babe and Bill had assumed their friend was bringing President Harry Truman to join them at a vacation, only to discover their guest was the flamboyant, eccentric Capote instead. Despite the awkward introduction, a friendship blossomed and Babe soon became the crown jewel of Capote's informal coterie of glamorous socialites, which he liked to call his swans. Gloria Guinness and Slim Keith were among these other swans, but Babe quickly became Capote's favorite. He praised her as not just a great beauty, but also a woman with a subtle wit and emotional depth that he found uniquely captivating. Capote's playful devotion flattered Babe. In return, she provided him an entree to the sort of high society gatherings that fueled his literary inspirations. He described being madly in love with Babe, albeit in a spiritual or platonic sense rather than a romantic one. For Babe, this friendship offered a spark of intellectual stimulation, a chance to be admired and adored without the demands her husband placed upon her. But in a tragic foreshadowing, Capote's intimate knowledge of Babe's private life, coupled with his flair for sensational storytelling, would eventually lead to one of her greatest betrayals. Rivalries and the burden of perfection. As Babe's star climbed ever higher, she found herself engaged in a subtle but relentless rivalry with other society figures, most notably Gloria Guinness. Though they both belonged to Capote's circle, the two women vied for the title of most stylish or most influential hostess in New York. Despite her poised exterior, Babe was not immune to jealousy and gossip. When it suited her narrative, she'd remind people that Gloria Guinness had once worked as a nightclub performer. For her part, Gloria did not hesitate to set traps for Babe's reputation. On one occasion, she invited Babe to join her on her private yacht, insisting that it would be a casual affair. Babe, following those instructions, packed simple daytime outfits, only to find Gloria emerging on the first night dripping in diamonds and dressed for a formal dinner. Publicly, Babe appeared magnanimous, but privately, she learned her lesson. In these rivalries, the only safe move was to be prepared for the grandest occasion, no matter what the invitation implied. Behind the scenes, Babe's determination to maintain a flawless social presence became almost obsessive. She was renowned for her meticulous hosting. Flowers, fresh newspapers, carefully arranged snacks. She considered every comfort a guest might need and provided it, whether at her Manhattan apartment or vacation home. According to one anecdote, she kept little gold notebooks where she jotted down anything that could be improved for future events. If one guest had to ask for an extra towel, that oversight would be duly noted and rectified next time. Her circle found it charming, if a bit extreme, but they didn't see the mounting pressure Babe endured to keep up appearances. The strains of married life. If Babe was a perfectionist by nature, her marriage to Bill only exacerbated that tendency. Bill demanded that his wife always look her best, an unspoken expectation that Babe labored tirelessly to uphold. Early in their marriage, Babe had the habit of setting her hair before bed, a typical nightly routine for many women of the era. Bill, irritated by the look and the time it took, insisted she stop. Eager to please, she complied, changing a simple habit to satisfy his whim. Such moments piled up over the years, creating an environment where Babe lived in near constant anxiety about Bill's next complaint. He displayed a fiery temper over trivial matters, like a lamp that was left broken even when the couple returned from a European trip. Babe's panic about potential confrontations escalated to the point where she would scramble for solutions, calling her sisters or household staff to remove any offending items before Bill could see them. Worse still, Bill's romantic interest in Babe gradually disappeared, leaving her feeling not only pressured, but also profoundly lonely. Some friends recalled that the couple had not shared intimate relations for nearly a decade. This breakdown was Bill's choice more than hers. Babe expressed willingness to make the marriage work, but found herself frozen out. In a culture that stigmatized divorce, especially a second divorce, and valued female perfection, Babe felt trapped in a passionless union that did little more than supply the outward trappings of success. Bill's infidelities and Babe's despair. While Babe struggled to remain appealing to Bill, he looked elsewhere for excitement. His type, ironically, stood in stark contrast to Babe's refined, dark-haired elegance. Bill preferred curvaceous blondes in the mold of Hollywood icons such as Marilyn Monroe. He took to visiting nightclubs and bars to pick up aspiring models and actresses, taking them along on supposed business trips to Hollywood that amounted to little more than lavish affairs. The knowledge of Bill's betrayals cut Babe to the core. Close friends noted that these affairs punctured her sense of self-worth. If Babe Paley, universally admired for her beauty, could not hold her husband's affections, then who could? The blow to her confidence was so severe that some contemporaries speculated she became nearly asexual, resigning herself to a life devoid of physical intimacy. Out of desperation, she fleetingly considered divorcing Bill. However, it was Truman Capote, ironically, who persuaded her to abandon the idea. Quoting his brutal logic, he reminded Babe that she lacked independent wealth, had 4 children to consider, and would face unimaginable social fallout. "Bill bought you," he is said to have told her. This callous statement had the effect of jolting Babe into acceptance. She napped, reflected, and never seriously raised the topic of divorce again. laughing men, and lingering loneliness. Denied emotional closeness in her marriage, Babe sought solace in friendships, often with witty, urbane men she affectionately called her laughing men. Truman Capote remained the most famous among them, but there were others, ambassadors, financiers, or simply men of style who enjoyed the repartee and sophistication Babe offered. Rumors occasionally swirled that she indulged in discreet flings. One story alleged a romance with an American ambassador in the 1960s, followed by a short-lived connection with a banker. Whether these dalliances were real or exaggerated, none lasted long or brought her lasting happiness. Remarkably, Babe never spoke ill of Bill in front of others, least of all her children. Even as her daughter Amanda described feeling neglected, Babe's outward composure stayed intact. She refused to tarnish her husband's reputation or her own carefully polished image. This unwavering commitment to presenting a united front, no matter how hollow, became another manifestation of her personal torment. By middle age, Babe's relationship with her eldest children, Tony and Amanda, was strained at best. She appeared closer to Tony than any of the others, but still not in the way a loving mother might typically behave. The two children she had with Bill, Kate and Billy, remained largely distant, forging independent lives away from the Paley household. In a sense, the woman who so thoroughly shaped the social scene could not maintain genuine intimacy within her own family. Health woes and the weight of expectations. Having suffered from severe migraines for much of her life, Babe often retreated to dark rooms for days at a time, seeking relief from pain. Over the years, she turned to tranquilizers to cope, adding an additional burden to her already stressed mind and body. She also sought therapy, a rare move in those days for someone of her social stature. Another testament to her efforts to find equilibrium. One habit Babe never managed to break was her heavy smoking. 2 packs a day seemed to soothe her nerves, but the eventual cost would be catastrophic. By the early 1970s, she was still a pillar of the social elite, revered for her silver hair, which she turned into a style statement, and her innovative little fashion tweaks. The iconic story of her removing a scarf from her neck on a hot day and tying it to her handbag, sparking a worldwide style trend, remains emblematic of how readily the public imitated her every move. But beneath the surface, her health was deteriorating. In 1974, doctors diagnosed Babe with lung cancer, a stark reminder that her carefully curated world could not protect her from every threat. True to form, she faced her illness with decorum. Even when chemotherapy treatments caused her hair to thin, she deftly covered it with chic turbans, transforming another potential vulnerability into a style choice. But the psychological toll of her diagnosis and Bill's continued philandering grew heavier by the day. Truman Capote's betrayal. Even as she battled a terminal illness, Babe faced a cruel betrayal from one of her closest confidants. In 1975, Truman Capote chose to publish an excerpt of his unfinished novel in Esquire magazine. Titled La Côte Basque, 1965, the piece was a thinly veiled account of real-life secrets shared among Manhattan's high society. Capote's stand-in narrator recounts salacious stories of a wealthy couple's bedroom troubles, details gleaned from Babe, and presumably meant to highlight her husband's callous nature. Although Capote may have intended to expose Bill Paley's misdeeds, Babe experienced the publication as a merciless unveiling of her long-guarded private humiliations. She had survived on silence and secrecy, presenting a flawless public image while enduring her husband's neglect. For that to be laid bare on the pages of a national magazine was unforgivable. The social repercussions were swift. The entire Upper East Side recognized Babe and Bill beneath the fictionalized veneer. Mortified and furious, Babe cut Capote from her life without a second thought. The man who had once been one of her laughing men was now persona non grata, cast out of the exclusive circle he had once been so eager to join. A fading light and a final revenge. By the mid-1970s, Babe's health had worsened significantly. Chemotherapy had limited success, and the unrelenting stress of her fractured marriage took its toll. In these final months, the veneer of perfect politeness began to crack. Babe grew less inclined to accommodate Bill's demands or tiptoe around his anger. The result was the emergence of a woman unafraid to show her frustrations. One day, Babe phoned CBS to inquire about her husband's whereabouts, asking, "What's the old SOB doing today?" A far cry from the carefully measured language she had always used in public. In another instance, with friends and family around, she unleashed a tirade against Bill, lamenting all the ways she had bent to his will. Only now, in her fragile condition, did she feel free to voice her resentment. This shift, while understandable, startled those who had only known Babe as the immaculate hostess and serene fashion icon. Yet for her, it was a catharsis, a last chance to unburden the thoughts she had kept locked away for decades. Deathbed farewells. As Babe approached the end, the stoicism that had marked her life persisted. On July 6, 1978, just one day after turning 63, she succumbed to lung cancer. Even in her dying hours, she reportedly insisted on applying makeup, refusing to let death rob her of her famously polished appearance. It was a final testament to a life spent ensuring that every detail, no matter how small, met her exacting standards. Her death did not, however, prompt a sudden transformation in Bill Paley. True to form, he carried on with his affairs, including one with a woman he met at his granddaughter's school performance. Rumors swirled that multiple women vied for his attention at Babe's funeral, whispering, "I'm going to marry him." In a final twist, Bill never did remarry, as though Babe's shadow remained too large to escape. Enduring legacy. In many ways, Babe Paley's life was emblematic of mid-century American high society, an era fixated on image, tradition, and the art of social climbing. She was a trendsetter who redefined elegance through simple gestures, a hostess whose parties drew Manhattan's most exalted guests, and a muse whose approval could make or break a fashion designer's fortunes. Yet to view her simply as a style icon misses the layers of suffering beneath. Unfulfilling marriages, troubled children, chronic health issues, and the constant fear that her meticulously composed life would come crashing down. Decades after her death, Babe's name endures in discussions of timeless style and the golden age of Manhattan society. Writers, historians, and fashion aficionados continue to reference her effortless chic, her subtle wit, and her intangible star quality. Even the controversies, like Truman Capote's betrayal, remain cautionary tales about mixing genuine confidences with a writer's propensity for dramatization. Ultimately, Babe Paley's story captures the dual nature of life at the top. She possessed wealth, prestige, and an almost mythic beauty. Yet those gifts could not insulate her from loneliness or heartbreak. Hers is a tale about the toll exacted by relentless social expectations, the ephemeral nature of external beauty, and the quiet courage it takes to wear a composed face even when everything behind it is shattering. In her final moments, Babe, always the perfectionist, still took the time to put on her lipstick before meeting her fate. Whether that act was a triumph of vanity or resilience is up for debate, but it is undoubtedly the act of a woman who refused to let the world see her any other way than precisely how she chose. From debutante balls to the shimmering swirl of high society events, Babe Paley's life was a study in contrasts. Early acclaim, devastating accidents, brilliant social triumphs, and harrowing betrayals. She spent decades orchestrating the perfect illusions of elegance, only to find them undone by the very people she trusted the most. Yet when we look past the designer gowns and glittering jewels, we find a woman struggling to find genuine companionship and meaningful love. In the end, her most valuable lesson lies in the dangers of valuing appearances above all else, an especially resonant message in any age where public image can overshadow private reality. Babe Paley was undoubtedly one of the most exquisite women of her time, But she was also, as one observer put it, damaged. A person whose exterior shone so brightly it eclipsed the darkness within. And still, that duality is precisely what makes her story endlessly compelling. A reminder that the glitter of high society is never quite as flawless as it seems. Thank you for spending this time unraveling the complex tapestry of Babe Paley's life. May her story serve as a conversation starter about the price of perfection, the hollow ring of social envy, and the possibilities of finding truth beneath the glossy surface.